Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur Ross. I play the viola, and this is episode 17 of the Arthur Ross video podcast. Welcome. The purpose of this podcast is opening the door to the practice room. Here I show the nitty gritty, how the sausage is actually made, how an artist performer creates his performance. Now today I am doing something that I've been threatening you to do for the past several episodes. I'm going to be analyzing the second movement of the Telemann Fantasy No.1, the Allegro movement, this bit right here. This is the first movement, which we'll get to at a later date, and the last movement, which we'll also get to at a later date. We're going to do the second movement of the fantasy. Now, I am not a music scholar, and I don't have a music theory degree. This is just the way I conceptualize music. This is just the way how I look at a piece of sheet music to help me better understand how to play it. So this, quote, analysis is going to be a phrase slash structure, architecture slash function analysis. Phrase, structure, architecture, function. An obvious question might be, well, it's an obvious question to me, is why should you care? Why do you need to know about music analysis? Well, first, I think this stuff's fascinating. And it's an opening to the way music is created. And this is opening the door to the practice room, so here we go. Second, just like everything else in life, it has its own structure. It has its own way of the way it was put together, and sort of understanding how that was done, or at least intimating how it might have been done by the composer, given what you see, can give you a doorway, or at least a window, into what you're actually hearing. So, okay, here we go. The first part here, this Allegro, you have heard me play this part from here up to here. And we'll get back to that. But one thing you may notice as you go through this music, measure by measure, line by line, is that there are notes everywhere, except in two places. Right here is a very small rest or silence. That's what that symbol looks like. And right here as well, an equivalent spot. Those silences happen to be a key to both the phrases, where the phrases begin and end in these parts, and also a clue to the overall structure to the piece in general. So what you have here, in this first little bit, you have phrase 1, or that counterpoint stuff I was talking about in episode 16. Here, these things you have those sweeping notes up and down that we discussed in the last episode. You see them again here, and guess what? They appear again over here, etc. What you may also notice is that you may see parallel structures or sets of notes that look similar. You have, at least in the first part of the piece and in the second part. Obviously, denoted by those two rests are the beginning of similar structures. These measures corresponding to these. Now, the sequential material that we talked about last time, sequence, of course you can read that writing, and sequence. So if these are the beginnings of the sequence, here to there, and here to there, then the material which comes before it must be the introductory material to those sequential lines. Introduction. So introduction, sequence, introduction, sequence. Now, another thing to keep in mind in terms of, since we're talking about parallels across the movement, this opening counterpoint material we discussed. Let's use another color. That opening counterpoint stuff happens again, similarly at least, here. The idea that you have a single line and then an additional line added to it. Single line with additional line or extra notes added to it. It also happens again over here. Actually starting there. With this one actually being slightly extended. Extended. That part's important. Now, another thing that we discussed last time is the tag material. Tag material, this thing, which appears again in other forms here, then here, and then here, toward the end. Okay. All right. By the way, I don't actually, the part that I actually play from, or the part that I actually work on, I don't write in colors on them. This is just for your benefit. So, okay. So, again, why do I go through this process? Well, one, it helps me to conceptualize why. Let me back up a step. When a composer is looking at a blank sheet of manuscript paper, by the way, this is what a blank sheet of manuscript paper looks like, obviously. When a composer is looking at this blank sheet, whether it's a physical sheet of paper or on a computer screen, how does the composer actually decide what notes go on the page? And then once a decision about the first note is made, how then do you make a decision about the second note, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, etc.? How does the composer actually determine what comes next? How does the composer actually bring structure or order to chaos? The order of what is chosen from the chaos of all the things that could have been chosen but weren't. Going through this analysis helps me understand why choices might have been made. Why this note and not another? Why this structure and not another? Why this phrase and not another? So starting from the first phrase, the first counterpoint phrase, or a musical term I used a while back, what was it called? Antecedent. Antecedent. Or the question phrase as opposed to consequent. Or the answer to that phrase. Antecedent, the question, and then the consequence or the answer. This sets up the pitch, this hits it. What you notice is that this structure of that kind of question and this kind of answer happens again in various ways. Sometimes the question is the same, antecedent, but the answer is different. This looks nothing like that. This, on the other hand, looks very much like that. These two look very similar. So, understanding that can help guide me in determining how I would play each of these sections. So, I think it might be helpful if I just kind of go through each phrase quickly and talk about the impression or the function that seems to occur to me, the purpose of each phrase or each set of notes. Phrase 1 introduces. Then you have the sets of sweeping notes that move backwards and forwards that I played last week, with a tag at the end. Then a repetition in an altered form of the sweeping notes, and then a very similar tag to cadence. Here we find the first rest in the entire piece, which clearly introduces a new section, new kinds of musical material. Introduction to sequence, followed by the sequence itself. Then you have transition material leading to an altered antecedent, and therefore an altered consequence. Altered meaning different than the consequence we've gotten before, given similar antecedent material. An elongation of the sweeping backwards and forwards notes that we were introduced initially way back in the beginning. That tag material, I forgot to add that one, that's another one. That tag material which looks like the altered consequent, both here and here, with again that tag material, which then leads to the next sequence, the rest, which indicates the a break in the a break or conclusion in the music that came before and the beginning of a new section, which just happens to be similar to what we've seen before. Introduction to sequential material, followed by the sequence itself. Additional tag material, which then leads to a new, or at least altered, antecedent. Extended. This antecedent was 2 bars long, and this one is extended by another 2 bars, followed by material similar to the consequent before, tag, a repeat of the consequent, tag to cadence. So, there you are. A phrase / structure, architecture / function analysis of the Allegro movement to Telemann's Fantasy No. 1. I hope this was interesting, at least interesting to you as it is to me. I haven't decided if, well, I will definitely do more of these analyses for you. I haven't decided if I'm going to do them in this sort of old school way of actual sheets of paper and markers, or if I'll do it the digital way. We'll just kind of have to see how that goes. So, this has been episode 17 of the Arthur Ross Video Podcast. You can see this episode and all the others at my website, arthurross.net, or at my YouTube channel, Arthur Ross Listening Laboratories, or on Facebook at the Arthur Ross Video Podcast page. Thank you for listening and watching, and I will see you next time.